She smiled at her bullies every day because she was planning something cold. You probably saw me and thought I was weak. A soft voice. A quiet girl. Someone who laughed at her own humiliation. But I was never laughing. I was waiting. Planning. And I wasn't going to strike until it was cold. My name is Amara. I grew up in a quiet little town where everyone knew everyone's business, except mine. I was the girl in the back of the classroom, always scribbling in her notebook, always smiling like the world was made of roses. But my world? It was made of thorns. High school was brutal. And no, not just the typical teenage drama. I'm talking about targeted cruelty. My clothes were thrifted, my lunch was packed in old containers, and my shoes. Well, they'd seen better days. My family didn't have much. My dad had left when I was 7, and my mom worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. That made me an easy target. And bullies? They don't need a reason. They just need a victim. There were 3 of them. Jenna, the ringleader, who walked like the hallway was her red carpet. Chloe, her echo, who never had an original thought but always had a cruel laugh. And Bryce, the golden boy, the charming devil who hid venom behind his smile. They didn't hit me. No, they were smarter than that. Their weapons were words, silence, whispers behind my back, and setups designed to humiliate. Like the time they swapped my presentation USB with a video of pigs squealing. The whole class laughed. I just smiled. Or the time they tricked me into thinking Bryce liked me, texted me sweet nothings for a week, then read them aloud during lunch, mocking every word. I remember everyone laughing, the sound bouncing off the walls like it was choreographed. My heart dropped, but my smile didn't fade. That smile was my armor. Because if they ever saw what was behind it, they'd know they'd already lost. The thing about pain is, it builds. Quietly. Slowly. Like ice forming in your veins. Until one day, you realize you're numb. That day came during senior year, when they made posters of me, photoshopped, vulgar, cruel, and plastered them across the school walls the morning of my college interview. I walked in wearing my best clothes. My mother had ironed my blouse that morning, proud of me. I had dreams of becoming a forensic analyst. But as I entered the campus, laughter echoed around me. Whispers. Fingers pointing. And then, the posters. I stood frozen, every inch of me burning with shame. The administrator removed them quickly, but the damage was done. My interview was canceled. They said they couldn't proceed with a candidate in the middle of controversy. Just like that, my future slipped. That night, I cried until my throat went raw. Then I wiped my tears, stood in front of the mirror, and said out loud, "You want a show? I'll give you one. Cold and unforgettable." I stopped reacting after that. No more flinching, no more hiding. I became even quieter, even sweeter. I complimented Jenna on her hair, helped Chloe with her homework, and even smiled at Bryce when he tried to trip me in the hallway. They didn't know I'd started recording everything. See? Pain sharpens you. I read everything: cyberbullying laws, school policies, forensic tools. I saved every text, every voice note, every humiliating photo timestamped and cataloged. I used my tech skills to trace their anonymous social media accounts. What they didn't know, I was building a case file thicker than any legal brief. And in the meantime, I made myself invisible. The best revenge starts in silence. Graduation day arrived like a false sunrise. Everyone was celebrating. I was smiling too, but mine wasn't joy. Mine was precision. I had transferred every piece of evidence to an encrypted USB. That morning, I sent anonymous copies to the school board, local police, their college deans, and even Bryce's father, who was running for state office. Then I walked across the stage in my cap and gown like every other senior. When I shook the principal's hand, I looked him in the eye and said, "You'll want to check your inbox." The storm hit fast. Jenna's full scholarship was revoked. Her acceptance letter rescinded due to a conduct violation. Chloe's parents were sued for harassment damages by a third student I had helped come forward. Rice? His father's campaign collapsed after the media leaked screenshots of his son's behavior, including hate speech and threats. The same day Bryce's father held a press conference to step down, I received a letter. A new university. A full scholarship. A chance to study forensic science. My dream wasn't dead. It had just been postponed. People began to talk. Some said I was cruel. Others whispered that I was a genius. But none of them dared laugh anymore. 5 years later, I walked into a courtroom, not as a defendant, not as a victim, but as a professional witness. I'd become a forensic cyber analyst. The case: a major identity fraud ring. And guess who the defense attorney turned out to be? Jenna. Her face froze when she saw me. She was polished, wearing a sleek suit, but her eyes were the same, cold and arrogant. She tried to shake my hand. I didn't. I simply smiled. During my testimony, I dismantled her case, legally, ethically, and precisely. When the judge thanked me for my clarity and dismissed the defense's motion, Jenna dropped her gaze. As I walked out of that courtroom, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. I had never raised my voice. I had never laid a finger. But I had buried them all. Slowly. Quietly. And with a smile. People always say revenge is best served cold. But they never tell you how delicious it is when it's slow, planned, and exact. I was never weak. I was simply patient. So the next time you see someone smiling, don't assume they've forgotten what you did. They might just be planning something cold. It had been 3 months since I testified in Jenna's case. I thought it was over. I thought I could finally live quietly, focusing on my work, my quiet apartment, my books. But then a letter came. No name. Just a sleek black envelope slid under my door. Inside was a single sentence. You only buried the children, now face the mother. Chills ran down my spine. I wasn't afraid. I was intrigued. I began digging. What I uncovered made me sick. Jenna's family wasn't just rich. They were connected. Deeply. Her mother, Margot Vale, was a powerful woman, cloaked in nonprofits and charity galas, but behind the mask was something rotten. She ran a private behavioral center for troubled teens. On paper, it was a school. In reality, it was a legal gray zone, a place where rich families dumped problematic kids to be punished into silence. And guess who used to intern there? Chloe and Bryce. Suddenly, it made sense. Their cruelty wasn't just teenage boredom. It was learned behavior. Practiced. Conditioned. But if Margot thought her name and wealth protected her, she didn't know me. I applied as a consultant to her center, using a new identity. Amara was gone. Now I was Sierra Lang, an independent forensic consultant for juvenile justice facilities. My resume was fake. My background wasn't. And my skills were lethal. I got the job. The moment I walked through those whitewashed walls, I felt it, the rot. Kids with blank eyes. A silence too heavy for any school. I spent 2 weeks there pretending to run security audits, but I was watching. Listening. Recording. What I found would destroy her. She wasn't just emotionally breaking children. She was drugging them. Running illegal clinical trials funded by foreign pharma companies. Some kids had disappeared altogether. Margot Vale wasn't just a cruel woman. She was a monster. This wasn't about me anymore. I reached out to families. Created anonymous leaks. Gave local journalists encrypted flash drives filled with video, paperwork, and internal memos. One whistleblower, an ex-nurse, came forward. I protected her identity. Then I made one final move. I sent Margot a bouquet of white lilies. The card read, "Your daughter taught me cruelty. Thank you." The next morning, federal agents raided the school. Margot Vale was arrested, screaming about conspiracies and fake files. But every paper trail was real. Every recording was time-stamped. Every broken child? a witness. The courtroom was packed. Cameras, reporters, even former students who had escaped. I was called to testify again. This time, not just as an expert, but as the person who blew the lid off everything. Jenna was there too. Not as a lawyer. As a broken woman watching her mother's world crumble. When Margot saw me, her face went pale. "You?" she hissed. I smiled. "Hello again." It took months, but Margot was sentenced to 65 years. No parole. Her Emperor Shai thought that was it. But a week after the verdict, I received another letter. This time handwritten. "You destroyed a legacy. But the blood in your veins isn't as clean as you think. Check your mother's maiden name." It made no sense. But curiosity burned. I pulled out old boxes, photos, papers. I searched until I found her birth certificate. And that's when my hands began to shake. Her maiden name was Lynette Vale. Vale, my mother, was Margaret's younger sister. Jenna was my cousin. And Margot? She had once tried to have my mother institutionalized because she refused to marry the man Margot had chosen. It all came full circle. Turd. Her school shut down. Her name forever blackened. I sat for hours, staring at the truth. The cruelty wasn't just around me. It was in my bloodline. But my mother had walked away. She had chosen kindness. Chosen to live in poverty instead of under Margaret's rule. She had never told me. I called her. She cried. She said she didn't want to burden me with that pain. "I wanted you to grow up soft," she said. Not cold. But it was too late. I wasn't cold like Margot. I was colder. Because I hadn't just destroyed Margot Vale. I had erased her from history with a smile. After learning the truth about my mother's family, the room felt colder, even without the air conditioner. The revelation weighed on me. My entire life, I thought I had been fighting strangers. Turns out, I had been cleaning up my own bloodline. My mother, Lynette Vale, had cut all ties. Changed her name. Moved far from Margaret's world of control and cruelty. But secrets don't stay buried forever. Especially when your enemies don't know your family. I asked my mother one question. Did Jenna ever know? She didn't answer. 1 week later, I received a call. Jenna wanted to meet. Not at a cafe. Not at a public park. At a cemetery. I arrived just as the sun was setting. The air was still, the headstones casting long shadows across the grass. She was already there in a black coat, her posture stiff. "This is where my mother was buried," she said without looking at me. "She died last week in prison. Heart attack. Or so they say." I stood beside her in silence. Then she turned and looked at me with eyes that had lost their fire. "You were always planning revenge, weren't you?" "No," I replied softly. "At first, I just wanted to be left alone. But when I realized what you all were capable of, I planned justice." Jenna looked away. "You think you've ended it. But something's coming, Amora. You think Margot was the empire? She was just the face. There are others. One in particular. They called him the architect. I couldn't sleep that night. The name haunted me. The architect. I searched. Nothing in public records. Nothing in prison systems. But one obscure forum, deep in the encrypted corners of the web, had a thread dating back 5 years. The architect keeps files on people from birth. Plans their rise or fall. Funds private prisons, biotech trials, and political campaigns. The next post read, "If you've ever lost everything and didn't know why." He probably did it. And then I saw something else. A name on a leaked financial document. S. Lang. That was the alias I had used at Margaret's school. He had already found me. For weeks, things went quiet. Then my apartment was broken into, nothing stolen, but my notebooks, USB drives, and hard drives were all scanned. Someone wanted to know what I knew. Someone was cleaning up. I had a choice, go into hiding or go to war. I chose war. I contacted two old victims from the behavioral center. One now worked in cybersecurity. The other had become an underground investigative journalist. Together, we formed a plan. Find the architect, unmask him, take him down. The trail led to an off-the-books tech foundation, funded by a mysterious figure known only as LR. Every donation, every transaction, every patent was scrubbed clean. But then we found it. A signature on a patent application for biometric surveillance software. Liam Royce. A ghost. No online presence. No criminal record. But endless offshore holdings and government-level clearance. We discovered he ran a black site, a psychological testing facility in Iceland. And worse, Jenna had once interned there. This wasn't just about bullies anymore. This was a multi-generational social control experiment, and I was never meant to escape it. I booked a flight under a fake identity. My journalist friend posed as a visiting behavioral specialist. Iceland's cold wind whipped through our coats as we approached the isolated facility, a steel structure hidden in the snowfields. We made it inside. Every hallway felt like a tomb. Children watched us from glass rooms. Guards patrolled silently. We moved carefully, logging footage, scanning data, copying files. Then we found the room. Hundreds of screens, each with a name, a face, a life. And there I was. Amara Vale. Status: deviation. Under surveillance since age 9. I gasped. This wasn't a facility. It was a simulation control center. We pulled every file, sent them to global journalists, human rights groups, intelligence watchdogs. And then we triggered the internal failsafe. Yes, they had one. Designed in case of exposure. The system shut down. The facility went dark. Liam Royce escaped. But the footage we leaked went viral. Governments were forced to respond. Investigations opened. Protests erupted. And as for me, I disappeared again. I changed my name. Again. Now I work globally, helping victims, exposing corruption. I never stay in one place too long. And Jenna? She teaches now, under her real name. She tells students about the cost of cruelty and the quiet power of those they underestimate. Sometimes we exchange letters. Never apologies. Just understanding. Last month, I received a single email. No sender. No subject. Just one image. A child's face. Watching me from a camera. And beneath it, 2 words. Still watching. I smiled. Because they can watch all they want. I've already burned their house down. Now I'm building something colder. Something that can't be erased. So if you're out there, watching, laughing, plotting, just know this. I'm still smiling. Because revenge wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning.